Who among us hasn't fantasized about the experience of driving a motorcycle? Driving a motorcycle is much different than driving a car. The feeling of speed and breathtaking scenery isn't just watching through a window. It's akin to watching a short movie. On a motorcycle, the wind hits you in the face and you maintain a sense of control. There may be unfavorable conditions, such as rain, cold weather, back and arm discomfort, but a true fan of their motorcycle ignores these inconveniences. The excitement, the sense of release, and the adrenaline rush all contribute to the pleasure of riding. The point is to embrace the imperfections and raw nature of the journey, allowing yourself to become one with the road beneath. Evelyn Adams was an ordinary woman who turned 50 a month ago, and she no longer dreamed of anything like this. She thought it was time to prepare for a peaceful old age. All passions, she thought, had subsided. She had safely dispersed her admirers and was fully enjoying her solitude. There was something serene about her life now. Her days were filled with a calm, predictable routine, and she had convinced herself that this was enough. However, deep down, some part of her soul still longed for something more, something exciting. Her daughter, Rachel, still couldn't choose between the two guys who were courting her and offering her hand and heart. "Rachel, look at Jason. He's a serious and thoughtful young engineer. He's showing promise, and he's even been sent overseas. They wouldn't just pick for that. He's saving up his money. He's a good man, of course, but when I imagine having to spend my life with such a miser." Brian, on the other hand. "Life gets boring with Brian," the girl replied. "Okay, at least things are stable with Jason. But Brian, he's always on the move. Always on the move. I have to run after him all the time, and it's exhausting." Rachel's voice held a mixture of frustration and longing, a desire for stability and excitement. "I don't know who you want if you're throwing good guys around like that," Evelyn sighed. "Then you'll marry whoever's left," she said with a shake of her head. It was hard for Evelyn to watch her daughter struggle with a choice that seemed so familiar to her, a choice between the safe and the wild, the predictable and the unknown. She couldn't help but see in Rachel a reflection of her young self, the one who had once chosen the safe path. Once, when Rachel finally chose Jason or Brian, Evelyn felt relieved but not happy. "He's coming to see us tonight." "You'll see for yourself," Rachel said. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Rachel wasn't home yet, so Evelyn opened the door for a visitor. On the doorstep stood a huge man in a leather jacket and the same pants, with lace-up boots on his feet. He looked like a man out of a movie. There was a confidence about him that was both intimidating and alluring. "Good evening, beautiful stranger," the man said. Evelyn was in such shock at the sight of her guest that she didn't immediately regain her senses. His presence filled the doorway, and for a moment she felt her heart beat in a way it hadn't in years. "You must have the wrong address. I am Rachel's fiancé, so to speak, and you're my future mother-in-law." "You look gorgeous," he said with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. Rachel came out of the shower. "Mom, why are you keeping Daniel at the door?" "Is that how you greet guests?" Evelyn pulled back from her shock and, hesitating, invited the man into the house. Throughout the evening, Daniel entertained Rachel and Evelyn with stories from his biker life. His deep voice filled the room, and Evelyn caught every word, and the vivid images of open roads and freedom awakened something dormant in her. A bike isn't just a means of transportation. its closest friend is a living being. Our code states that a biker can't ride just because it's fashionable. A biker and his bike are one, he explained, and his passion was evident. The way he talked about his bike was almost romantic, and Evelyn couldn't help but be fascinated by the connection he described. Rachel was already saturated with this world, but to Evelyn's surprise, she became very interested. At every word, she felt some crazy fire inside her, a desire she hadn't realized she had. Daniel noticed her condition and smiled approvingly, sensing her growing curiosity. "Looks like you're one of us. Would you like me to take you for a ride?" he asked, looking at her defiantly. "I really want to," Evelyn replied, her voice barely above a whisper, and her heart pounding. "Mom, are you serious? You can't imagine how scary it is." "It's really fast." "You've never ridden anything like this," Rachel warned, her concern obvious. "Don't scare your mom ahead of time." "I won't go too fast on her first ride, I promise," Daniel assured her, winking at Rachel. "So, what do you say, Evelyn?" he repeated, his voice encouraging her, pushing her closer to the edge of something exciting. A month later, the wedding took place. It was a colorful spectacle that began with an interesting bride-buying ceremony outside Rachel's house. The groom's friends lined up their heart-shaped iron horses, their engines roaring in celebration. On the threshold of the house, Daniel made an unusual vow to Rachel. "Rachel, I vow to take you on bike rides and let you into the garage." Rachel, in turn, promised to keep the bike dwelling tidy and never pick on him. Everything went merrily along, and they began their normal life, filled with the mellow routine of newlyweds, but always with a touch of excitement brought on by Daniel's biker lifestyle. One day, Daniel came home. It was dinner time, and Rachel wasn't home. The house was quiet, and Evelyn was sitting in the kitchen sipping tea. "Remember the first time I came to visit you? I promised to go for a ride with you, but I never did. That's not a good thing." "Let's go," he said to his mother-in-law with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. "Let's go," Evelyn replied slyly, setting the cup down, her heart already racing at the thought. "Put something on." "I'll wait for you," Daniel said, his voice full of anticipation. When she came out, Daniel admired her slender figure, confidently circling her with his eyes. She was dressed in a leather jacket and pants, and the way she moved radiated a strong attraction. The scent of leather mixed with her perfume reached him, stirring something deep inside. She looked stunning, and for a moment Daniel felt his breath catch. "Wow," was all the man could manage to utter, his voice thick with admiration. They stepped out into the courtyard. Such a handsome man Evelyn had never even dreamed of seeing. Her knees were shaking with excitement, maybe even fear, but it didn't matter because in front of her stood a real Dodge Tomahawk, the fastest, coolest, and most beautiful motorcycle in the world. She couldn't believe she was going to get to ride it. When she got comfortable, snuggled up against her brother-in-law's back, and wrapped her arms around him, she felt incredibly good and relaxed. The jacket smelled of leather, and she inhaled the scent. It excited her, and she didn't know why. Something about this closeness, about the energy of the motorcycle beneath them, made her feel alive. The motorcycle flew down the highway. Daniel, as promised, wasn't pushing the bike too hard, but he was trying to maintain the optimal speed so as not to startle her. The world around them blurred into streaks of color, and Evelyn felt her heart sink with each turn, each burst of speed. I want to feel his power," shouted Evelyn, echoing the roar of the engine, and her voice filled with elation. Daniel grinned and replied, "Okay, you'll feel it now." He waited for her to beg for mercy, but Evelyn never did. She clung to him, her laughter mingling with the wind, her spirits soaring as they raced down the open road. When they stopped, Evelyn looked like a witch. Her eyes were burning, her hair black and disheveled under her helmet, her lips dry from the wind. Daniel pulled her to him and kissed her passionately, unable to resist the tension in her eyes. "I want to moisten your lips," he told his mother-in-law with undisguised delight. This woman, who at first had seemed quite ordinary and predictable, like many of her peers, now seemed quite different. She was fierce, lively, and utterly fascinating. They pulled off the road into the woods. What happened between them? There was the perfect ending to the trip, a moment that brought them both great pleasure. Evelyn nudged her son-in-law, saying, "Come on, kid, press the pedal to the floor." When they finally returned, the sun was lower, and the sky was colored in shades of orange and pink. Evelyn felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, a deep sense of freedom and connection beyond anything she had imagined. In that moment, she realized that life was far from over and the adventure was just beginning.